So they get fired or say they get injured, they have no benefits. And then when they find that out, because most feel like that's just how things work, but in this one customer, he basically terminated the employee. Well, the employee was like, oh, I'm just gonna go get unemployment. Yeah, you're a 1099, you don't get unemployment. Tell them that you were fired and you're never told that 1099 that you didn't get unemployment. This guy got investigated. They went back 19 years. He had to pay almost $750,000 in back salary to people based on the hours they worked. And that didn't even include all the fines that they have to pay. So it's severely, severely underestimated in terms of, you know, when you pay 1099. And believe me, I have a friend that owns a construction company in Northern Virginia. He's got about 6 or 7 employees. He's probably watching right now. And I won't mention his name, Keith. But, you know, he has like 6 or 7 employees that he pays 1099. You know, and I've told him, they are going back and they're going to start to check. And they will go back and they will say you owe us all tax. Because, by the way, folks, that's tax evasion is what it is. That's why employers pay you as 1099. So that's my biggest hurdle, because I walk in and I say, oh, I can do workers' comp for you. You know, I can do your payroll for you. Well, I mean, how much are you paying these guys? Well, and then they're under the table or over the table? And I'm like, yeah, I didn't hear that. I mean, now granted, you know, either way, it's just at that point, I know there's a conversation to be had, but when I tell them, like, you're gonna have to you can't pay 1099s anymore. And they look at it like, well, I've been doing it for 20 years. And I'm like, well, now's the time to change. Because you know, they know they're gonna pay a lot more money, and you're gonna have to pay, you know, payroll tax and all the other taxes, but at least they'll be legit. There's so many companies out there that don't want to do that. So that's one of the biggest hurdles that I run into. You know, people are always asking, like, what's the most ideal company? I mean, to take advantage of, you know, BBSI services in terms of everything that they offer, no, there's no doubt the blue collar space by far, because when you add in the safety feature, and you have a safety officer from BBSI that can show up and take a look at your job site and say that you're compliant in terms of the state, and, you know, who's tethered, who's not, you know, how far are they off the ground, you know, how far is that gap supposed to be from that wall, and by all means. But at the end of the day, there's so many businesses that would take advantage of this. You know, they don't relinquish any control. Every owner has complete control of their company, regardless of, you know, there's a lot of myths out there that, like, PEOs are bad because, well, you know, have you guys ever been cut a paycheck and it has Paychecks or ADP on it? Have you ever seen that before? And it's like, not the company you work for. Well, that's what they get with BBSI. You're gonna get BBSI on a paycheck. Well, so when you got that check, that means that your company was actually on a PEO service. There are huge benefits to that besides just ancillary services. Because you also have, like, you'll ride off of their unemployment numbers. So think of like your BBSI being like the company of companies. They have a whole bunch of companies underneath of them, which technically they classify that as like employees. So BBSI has hundreds of thousands of employees because they have thousands of customers, ranging of, you know, I think I did that, sorry. Ranging from, you know, 5 employees all the way up to, you know, 500. So that gives you huge benefit because it gives you kind of like buying power. That's kind of where Jeff and Choice come in. So, you know, when it comes to healthcare, you know, it's obviously the more employees you have, you know, the more attractive the pricing on healthcare would be. So Jeff is a perfect balance for that because, you know, when they need healthcare numbers and stuff like that, I don't have to sit there and, like, you know, reach out and try and find somebody that knows anything about plans. I mean, that's why I have Jeff and Choice Insurance to deal with that. You know, BBSI has a solution for healthcare. And if the participation rate is high enough, then we can take care of them. But either way, I have that part of the market cornered, so I don't have to worry about that. Because if I can't take care of them, I know Jeff can, and vice versa. So, but like I said, as you can see, it's like any direction that an owner of a business would turn, that's where somebody like BBSI, being a PEO, would be there to help. The biggest thing that I do with customers is you kind of take the total cost of what BBSI would charge them, and you can divide it by like a 40-hour work week. And I just tell them, say, look, per hour, and it ranges, but say roughly $15 an hour. I'm going to give you a payroll specialist and an HR person and a safety person for $15 an hour. And that's all three of those professions wrapped up into one for 40 hours a week. Kind of tough to really argue that number because, last time I checked, I think experienced HR folks make a little bit more than 15 an hour. Not to mention your average safety, even the safety companies, you're talking anywhere between $200–300 an hour to bring a consultant out to a job site and have them check it. So, it's kind of like, my role as a whole to many of these companies that I go in to talk to is it's kind of like, I'm like the master of ancillary services, and I know a few of you in the room. So we all know how the networking game works. It's one thing to know somebody that's in a sector, but it's another thing to actually know the person that's in that sector because, it speaks volumes when I can say, hey, I know a guy, or I know a girl, I got a person here, I got a person there. And they're like, they love that. So that's kind of the strongest part of like my relationship with customers is I'll come in, I'll show them the core piece of what we do. But at the same time, I build that relationship and say, like, if there's something outside of here, but it's within the realm of your business, let me know because I can definitely help. So, and, working with BBSI has, it's opened my eyes in terms of like the amount of money that a company can save by being with a PEO. I could spend hours up here talking about just workers' comp as a whole, but when Kellen said an hour, and I'm like, I'm not even going to encroach on that because you start going down that road, it's a whole different ballgame. But trust me when I tell you that in terms of the communication that BBSI has with its customers, if there's any kind of claim made, the first call goes to BBSI versus going to a doctor. Okay? When employees get hurt, especially when you get a note from the doctor saying that, they're injured, the bee sting is really bad. They're not gonna be able to come in for the next 3 weeks to take a ditch, for lack of a better term. So the quickest thing that gets people back in the field is by bringing them into an office and seeing them chair and say, well, didn't say anything about light duty, so we can get you to file, fill out paperwork, make phone calls. So they're the kind of things that like BBSI will suggest and say, look, you may have somebody that's injured, they can't do their job, but you can at least get them in and to do those duties. It's really amazing how fast they heal. Usually, it's not in a lot of medical journals, but it's going to cut it down by about 90% guaranteed that they're going to be in the field within a few days because they're going to feel real better. So, there are a lot of like the intangible parts of how a true PEO like BBSI would help you guys out. So, I guess really in a nutshell, I'm just going to open up versus like a group of like 40 or 50 people. So when it comes to based off of service that has to be in place is actually payroll. Now, having said that, you can do payroll in HR, you can do payroll in healthcare, you can do any of the other services as long as payroll is in place because that's how they bill. So they're going to take it out via your payroll and weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis, however it comes. So, and with that payroll, you actually get, you really get 2 full-time people. You're not getting a call center. You're getting mobile phones and desk phones. So the way BBSI sets up, it's completely unique to the industry. Is they do what's really kind of like their business groups. So it's like 200. There's 200 customers to each business group. So, and within that group, you have your payroll, your HR, and your safety. So, and then you have a team leader on top of that. You get all those numbers. So, but to answer your question, you can piecemeal, but payroll's got to be the main piece. So at that point, you can do, like I said, payroll, safety, whatever the case is. Anyone? I'm not sure.
You said you mentioned that you do HR and stuff as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just in your 5th largest, you said.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I drive down the road and I hear all these fly-by-night companies, Bambi, things like that.
Yeah.
What's the these people are trying to sell on price? It sounds like on the radio.
They do.
And just get you to ring the phone. What is your talking points to something like that as to why you don't want to go with a fly-by-night company, but talk to somebody more professional like you?
No, great question. So, by the way, I've always said, BBSI does a lot of really good things. The worst thing that they do is advertise. That was probably, by far, probably one of their biggest things. They just don't spend money in advertising. New CEO came in place about 1.5 years ago and said, look, we like all the PGA tournaments that we're sponsoring, LPGA. They just cut it out. So, when I speak with a customer, my talking points are all about value. And I think just like all of you other folks that are, business owners, sales professionals, you have to build value behind your product, because otherwise you can't just drop a price on them and be like, let me backtrack now. So there are a couple companies that absolutely will come in there and be like, we're going to give you all this, and we're going to be 1/3 of the price that BBSI is. My biggest question is do you think we're that expensive for a reason? Or really, it's kind of like, you got to wonder why they're so inexpensive. Mm-hmm. So that's my biggest thing overall is just, I can say that, I'm really big in like testimonials. So I'm sure you guys have all seen, you have somebody that you're selling against, I'm going to give you a customer. Call one of my customers, and you give them the name and number of that customer. What I do is I have a list. It's a list of all the customers. Pick one. I couldn't have called them all, but pick them. I'll give them my whole entire book. Just pick one. Ask about me. Talk about the company, and ask them any questions you want. Because every customer, once they come on board, the first thing I say is, hey, look, I'm going to use you as a reference once we get you going and stuff, and you're happy. And I said, I'm always in touch with them. I do a real big mail merge once a month. So even though technically I'm out of the picture, when they sign on, you don't need a sales guy anymore. But I always stay in because I like to maintain a relationship, find out, obviously get more business, grow my network. But they always get a monthly update from me. I don't know, how many of you guys ever done mail merge? By the way, we're saying a mail merge that actually it looks like you are getting the email individually. So there is no what is it, MailChimp and stuff like that, where you see the headers and all that stuff. It's like, okay, I know this is going out to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I literally send it out so that way it looks, and it's just it's so personal, it's easy to do, and monthly contact. So I can always say, they're on the list, call anyone you want. So that's really kind of the differentiator. When it comes in, it's just I'm really good at building the value behind it, because what's out there, you're getting call centers that are either based in India, outside the state even, but we don't do that. Most of the places, I give you a tour of the BBSI facility right now, and in Salisbury, and you walk in and you see all the business units. I mean, they're all right there, fully functional, and I can tell you so. But yeah, in a nutshell, it's pretty much the way I handle that.
Okay.
So recently, there's been, Insperity has come in to the area.
Mm-hmm.
Would they be your biggest competition?
I would say I don't see them as being my biggest competition, mainly because their core strengths are in companies that are like 100 and up. It's like 100 employees and up, and I say that because we don't offer the whole like back end tracking of like applications. They do a higher level integration. Ironically enough, my brother is the CFO of a fairly large company in Massachusetts, about 400 employees. I mean, they use Insperity because his requirements were outside of my purview. I mean, I can't do all the back end network integration and stuff like that they do. And that's really their focus because they have a ton of customers. They spend a ton of money on like advertisements, marketing, stuff like that. I mean, they will throw a lot of money. They've got baseball, football, you name it. But they're really not my competition because BBSI is probably the most hands-on ever. I mean, with Insperity, you're going to get a call center. They're not so much hands-on. But once again, when you're going into the 100, 200, 300 level of employees of companies, they don't want you to be they have HR in place.
Right.
They have all the they just want the system, the access, and they want to be able to be placed underneath a PEO because there's some huge tax benefits to doing that. So it's just more savvy, more complicated solutions. The biggest piece is workers' comp and the healthcare is where we're really competitive. I mean, that's huge. When I came down to the area and I met Choice, I mean, that was huge because not everybody fits into the BBSI piece of the healthcare, and I can easily do that. So it's like, that's perfect. So, and the workers' comp, being, they're still outsourcing it, we don't. And I would say we're probably about 80% blue collar. So that's, if that's say the target, and anybody, does anybody know what a mod rating is when it comes to workers' comp? Probably not. Don't be upset. It's awful. So there's a certain rating once you go above like a 1.2. Like your average mod's like 1. 1.2 means you probably made a claim along the line somewhere, and anything above that, Insperity won't even touch it. I mean, they think that's too risky. So it's really not. But I mean, I've always told the Insperity reps I meet, I'm like, hey, when you get a mod more than 1.2, you can walk away, give me a call. I mean, I'm more than happy to pay. I mean, so it's really simple. So
you're more for us, for the small business.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, 100%, 100%. I mean, when somebody says like, hey, like we just came into the office space, or I just got into my 5th or 6th employee, and we're really starting to take off, that's when you want to get somebody like us in there. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I haven't made a claim. I went to workerscompinsurancequick.com. and they have it out there. It's like 7-Eleven for workers' comp. I mean, you get it, this is online. Every one of you are going to see workers' comp pop up on your freaking browsers now.
Yeah,
so you know.
You said it.
I said it, it's on the internet. And your phones are all on, the microphones are on.
Right,
Chinese know, and everybody else knows. But at the end of the day, it's just, you go to cheap insurance, it's literally like cheapworkerscompinsurance.com or something like that. Like I still don't know how they do it. I'm like, how that's legal, I have no idea, but it is. And the thing is you know what? If you go for instance, if you go to a residential job to a commercial job, commercial jobs you have that mandatory workers' comp. That's when these guys go out and they go to cheap, there you go, piece of paper says I got comp. Now that guy gets hurt, somebody gets hurt, God knows where that claim's gonna go.
Yeah.
But they're gonna deny every claim. I mean, if the guy stubbed his toe, it ain't getting paid for, so just
You get what you pay for.
yeah, that's exactly it. So, and by the way, the customer retention with BBSI is like 8+ years. I mean, ADP, Paychecks, even Insperity, they'll turn it over real fast. Because cost-wise, once again, that's why I built value, is because we're not inexpensive. Notice I didn't say cheap. We're not inexpensive. I think based on the value and stuff like that, especially when you're charging $15, $16, $17 an hour for the fees on top of your payroll. I mean, when you're getting all and I'm talking about this is like all the services combined. That's a fantastic deal. I mean, it really is. I mean, you're getting hands-on service, versus, Insperity somewhere around like 300. But once again, that's what they're going to charge somebody small, like 5, 10, 15 employees. 100, 200 and up, that's their sweet spot. So, but in a nutshell, guys, that's about it, really.
I can say he is a very generous and giving individual, so working with him is wonderful.
I appreciate
And he didn't pay me to say that.
Right? I only have $1 on
I was
it.
gonna say, you don't get that dollar that I just
I don't get that
No.
dollar, but that's all
But
right.
keep going, you're up to 5 right now.
Tom, because I'm looking at your site as you're talking here, and I was just wondering, I know you talked a lot about workers' comp
Yeah.
and healthcare.
Sure.
On the HR side, because one of your clients on here talks about you guys help BBSI helping them with important HR decisions.
Mhm.
How in-depth, like on the HR side, do you all get outside of workers' comp, healthcare? I mean,
You get a sit down. So we have an HR generalist and an HR specialty. So I mean, you get a sit down with these folks. You have issues, you call these.
I was gonna say, are you like the type of company that says, "Hey, I've got a sexual assault claim or something like that." Can you guys?
Well, along those lines.
Along those,
So what I tell customers is like, look, I would rather have you call us up and say, hey, look, I'm really thinking about hitting Troy with a hammer right now, versus, hey, by the way, I just hit Troy with a hammer. Like, call me up. Sorry, I'm looking at you, so it's easier.
Oh, you thought that was funny?
So, it's a consultation. It's
Okay.
a complete consultative approach. So yeah, absolutely.
Full HR consultation.
Yeah, no, there's no hey, you only get one consultation a month. Here's a big thing that my competition does. I've yet to see anybody do it differently. Thanks for coming on board. We're gonna give you HR. We're gonna give you safety, right? Here's your payroll stuff. I need a handbook. All right, cool. I'm gonna send you 4 links. Whichever one you need, just click on that link, follow the instructions, and you'll get that done. Like, it'll show you how to do it. There ain't no people involved. You're doing the work yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Not with BBSI. They're gonna call you and be like, let's sit down. We'll do the employee handbook. What's the breakdown of your folks? Do we have to do it in English and Spanish? I mean, all this stuff is covered by, the overall fees that BBSI. There is no another menu of pricing after you come on board.
Okay.
So that's all. Cool.
Yeah.
So with handbooks, that means policies and procedures as well?
That's correct. Yep. Absolutely.
That's a
Yeah.
huge mushroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
Especially for small, medium businesses, because no owner's going to have time to put a formal handbook together when they're trying to run their business. So,
And they have no idea, like,
and they have no idea what the laws are exactly.
Like don't hit people.
and by the way, those laws change
All the time.
on almost a monthly basis.
Yeah.
I kid you not, something gets added.
And that's what I was asking. I was looking at your site. That's what I was asking. So, okay.
Yeah, so it's you have to be HR compliant. I mean, so everybody thinks it's like, oh, I got posters on the wall.
No.
I'm like, okay, well, you took care of like half of the first page, maybe.
Most of those posters are decades old. If you go and actually look
Exactly,
at
yeah,
the date down at the
yeah.
bottom.
Copyright 1979.
Yeah.
When we moved from our other building, I had to peel it off the wall. It was so old, it was
Yeah,
ridiculous.
no, I mean, there.
And I'm the owner, I should have been updating that stuff, right?
Which, by the
I
way,
got time for that.
also payroll compliance.
Yeah.
There's a lot of compliance around payroll that
Yeah.
folks, they just think it's just submitting numbers and getting it done. We've had customers submit payroll and then we'll take a look at it, call them back and say, hey, look, real quick, looking at the math here, the numbers are this, or the bonuses, and And we could break that down and do job costing, the whole 9 yards. That's the other thing, when it comes to workers' comp. People putting under certain job codes. Like, we found a customer, actually, Wolf. So they were job coded in 3 different states. They're supposed to be. But they were coded for California. In New York, Illinois, and California. They all had the same tax codes.
Oh,
So they were paying stupid amounts of money.
California taxes. and
Yeah,
layers.
for all their locations.
Yeah.
And then their main facility was in Rocky Mount.
In North Carolina.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez.
So they're paying California taxes in Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
Oh,
that's
Jesus.
crazy.
Like, and that's workers' comp, so that's insurance,
Yeah.
and you're not getting that money back.
Yeah.
So when we saw that, I'm like,
Gavin,
I
you
can
did
save you
mine.
money right now, and all I gotta do is change the number. I mean, like, thousands of dollars, it was insane.
Yeah.
They were with them for years.
That's the whole reason they went to North
Yeah.
Carolina. To get away from-
So that's the kind of stuff that PEO brings. And
Okay.
like I said, it's got a really,
That's the added benefit that you guys have then is that personal
oh,
aspect.
absolutely,
of this.
100%. It is
No doubt for
absolute
that.
custom hand-holding.
Good.
I mean, it's what they do. So that's about it, guys.
Sweet.
Cool. Good.
Thank you so much, sir.
Tim, Tom.
Like I said, appreciate it, Tim.
Enjoy today.
Everybody have their card?
Everybody put their card in.
I'll put another one in if you want. No, don't you do it, Danny, because you know you're gonna win, Danny.
No,
Golly, you win these things all the time.
I do that.
Trying to double my luck.
But what I said, you're a friend of hers, so we know you have the leg up. Is it business card?